So we have, let's see what we have here. So we have a grantee portal question here that I think Chris could answer, but we had this one come in. When grantees get the request link, can they also upload documents to that, or do they have to do it on the first page?
Right. So I think when, so just to clarify, when I believe when someone says the request link, there is a button on your, so when you set up your grantee portal, you will have a generic template that you've created that will have maybe information about the grant and then maybe apply for a grant button, right? When you click on that button, I believe that's what you call the request link, or this is what they were referring to. So yes, they can upload documents to an application that's attached to that apply for a grant button, right? So if you have a documents component on the actual grant form, then you're able to upload documents to that. And I think the second question, or do they have to be on the first page? I think what, just to clarify, you know, I have had some other clients who've created additional generic templates, and they call them like maybe additional documents or documents for the grant, where maybe they're templates that are attached to that grant form. So maybe there's a budget template they need to fill out, right? So you can actually create a generic template that houses these, I guess, templates for your grant form that are required to be uploaded and associated with your grant form when you submit it. So you can actually download those there. And then once you actually start the grant application form and fill out the form, and then you can fill out that template, upload it to the form, and then submit it for review.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And yeah, like definitely the documents component is going to be key there. So looks like we have another question here regarding the portal. If I click on the request link and go to an application, am I out of the Flux site? Chris, did you want to touch on that as well?
So the way that, so the original design of the grantee portal is obviously it's a one-stop shop for your grantees, right? So we want to make sure that they're not removed from the actual portal. So to answer that question, no, you're not out of the Flux site. So when you do initiate an application, if you set it up correctly, it should pop up in that same kind of tab or window, so that, you know, they're still in that same kind of environment when they're actually submitting a form.
Got it. Okay, and we have a question that came in here from Shannon. So her questions are regarding the reviewer portal and specific groups. So let's get into this one. Can you customize a reviewer dashboard for a specific group of reviewers? That might be for a different group of reviewers. I think, did Chris or Anna want to chime in on this one?
Sure. So I do believe this is possible. What you would need to do is have a separate profile or two separate profiles for each reviewer group, and then you would assign a special dashboard to that reviewer group, or to that profile.
Got it. So you're essentially going to be creating a separate profile that acts also as a reviewer profile, but then you could assign different dashboards to them in the user settings section in the admin panel.
And you can even go down to the actual review form as well. You can have multiple review forms for different groups of reviewers, and using that reviewer component that you would add to your kind of internal section of the grant application form when you're kind of reviewing it. That's where you would assign which sort of form to use for that reviewer group would have to use when actually doing the reviews on the actual grant application.
Definitely. And the reviewer portal, the reviewers component on the request is definitely one of the best ways to kind of parse them out and send them out to different reviewers. So great way to go about it. Again, guys, feel free to either ask questions in the Q&A section or in the chat. I see Shannon also threw that in the chat earlier, and it looks like I kind of missed that. So my fault. Thanks for moving it over to the Q&A section, Shannon. Okay, let's see what else we got in here. It looks like we have another question. Does the reviewer portal allow the user to come into the system just to see the shared dashboard? Do you refine their permissions as part of that process as well?
Yeah, so that all comes down to profiles, right? And if they have the reviewer, so let's say you have a user within your system and you provide them with a reviewer profile and an employee profile. The greatness of Flux is that when they log in and they have both of those different profiles, a pop-up will show up. and they'll be able to choose, let's say they have the employee profile and a review profile, they'll be able to choose which profile or which dashboard they'll have access to. But if a user only has one profile, they'll automatically kind of get logged into that dashboard that profile is associated with.
Right. All right, so let's see what else we have come up here. Let's see, we have so many versions of the grantee portal that we're having a hard time keeping track of them all. What's the best way to keep everything organized? When might we want to think about deleting some? I think Chris has something for this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is a very specific use case. I would need to know more information about like why they have multiple grantee portal, I guess, versions. I would say, you should always have one grantee profile kind of dashboard and portal available. And then, the way that I would, when you're building different, if you have to update sort of the subsections within the grantee portal, on the builder side of things, you version out the naming convention of these things. And then I would usually, maybe like as a builder, I like to keep the last maybe 10, like five versions, just in case you want to go, like maybe you made a mistake in one of them, you want to go back to a previous version. So I wouldn't keep all of the different versions you have from the very start. But best practice is to not have many versions. Yeah. I think it's so that you're not confused on which one's the most current too.
Definitely, and that's something that we try to practice as much as possible internally, is to make sure we keep our dashboards clean so we're not accidentally assigning the wrong ones out, because the grantees can't see this live. So we have a question here from Barb that but your question is, where are the presentations on the community site? Are they all together or by title? So there's actually a whole community group within the community called Ignite, and that's where we're keeping all of the presentations that were given. If you're alluding to like these presentations, like recordings of the Q&As, these are going to be uploaded onto our knowledge base. Along where we kind of keep all of our recorded webinars. There's going to be two sections in the knowledge base. One section is the actual knowledge base, and then the second section is training webinars, where you can find the calendar and recordings of everything else. I think Jasmine also just posted the link to the community as well, just in case you haven't found that yet. Okay, let's move on to the next question here, and I think this one's going to stay with Chris. Once a grantee submits an application or report, should it be locked? Any best practices you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is more of a kind of like a process-informed type of question, but I think what I've seen with the implementation that I've done is, yes, like I think you should lock the application form or even a grantee report once it's been submitted by the grantee. You wouldn't want them to make changes in the middle of your internal reviews that are happening on any of those types of forms. So best practice is always to lock the application or report once it has been submitted.
Got it. Looks like we got one that just came in from Shannon. My call for applications deadline is at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. Can I simply turn off the attributes for the new application button rather than changing the dashboard? Did anybody want to chime in on that? Let's go, Chris.
So yes, you can. So there's a way in the admin panel where you can actually remove that button, and it's based on sort of a time stamp, I guess, not time stamp, but basically dates. So you can actually have that button removed from the grantee portal so no one can actually submit application forms.
Yeah. And looks like Barb found the community, the Ignite community. Awesome, glad to hear that you were able to locate that. Thanks, Jasmine, for posting the link in there. And again, we still have like about 5 to 6 minutes if any more questions wanted to roll in here. But let's go back to some of the other questions that were sent in beforehand. Let's see here. In the grantee portal, how could a grantee start in the general application and choose a category, for example, education, that leads to new aspects of the application? Can I use conditional logic, or do I need a separate template? Chris?
Yeah, so you can do both, right? I mean, the application form is very flexible enough to be able to use conditional logic. So I've had a client where they have maybe like general application questions that every type of applicant needs to answer. And then they can have a question that triggers conditional logic to show certain specific questions based on maybe a strategy area that they're applying for. So you can definitely do it that way. I've also had other clients do it where they have separate application forms. I think, best practice, I would say they're really, you can do it both ways. I think it just really depends on how big your organization is. If you want to be able to manage multiple application forms, if you want to build out, if let's say you have 6 different strategy areas and you want to build out 6 different application forms, you could, but management of that could be a little bit cumbersome if you're a smaller foundation. So you may want to use a conditional logic, aspect of form building. So.
Definitely. And again, a lot of these are just going to be kind of up to your process. So, yeah, great. Let's move on to the next question here. Let's get some reviewer portal questions in here. Are the reviewer forms easily configurable for different reviews?
I mean, so this is Chris again. Yes, I think I kind of answered this. Like, you're able to create different versions of a review form based on different reviewer groups. So yes, you can easily configure different review forms.
And then to select the different forms, you just do it in the reviewer.
In the reviewer component, yes.
Got it. What about if you want your reviewers to score on the individual parts of the application? Could you write some computations to make a sum of that?
Yes. So yeah, this is Chris again. Yes. The beauty of our review forms is when we first developed the reviewer portal, we understand that there are both qualitative and quantitative kind of reviews that have to happen on these application forms. So you can definitely, have a combination of both, being able to kind of like have a qualitative review of an application form based on sections, or you can you can do the summing of like ratings, right? Like you can rate different parts of the application form based on like ratings that you develop as a foundation. You can integrate those into the review form and sum those, and then make decisions based on those kind of computations for sure.
Definitely. Okay, and let's see here. Let's see. Can you touch on the best way to get uploads and or documents into the reviewer portal? Did anybody want to chime in on that?
So it sounds like the question here is you can either, so the way that the reviewer portal, I can answer in both ways. I guess you could, I haven't seen any reviewers have to upload documents to the review forms when they're actually doing the review. But on the flip side of things, when you're reviewing an application form, if you have the document component there and you have it visible to the reviewers, you're able to kind of review any of those attachments. They can review those attachments if needed, to kind of like help them with the review process as well.
Definitely. So I think we're getting close to the end here. If anybody else has any last minute questions, now would be a great time to throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A section. But if not, we're going to go ahead and keep it moving. Again, so want to thank everybody for kind of taking the time here, for joining us, and of course to our Fluxxperts as well for taking time out of their busy days to answer some of the questions that we've got going on here. So I think we're just going to go ahead and end it. We're coming up right at the 30 mark. So again, thanks for all for attending. Thanks for your great questions. Thanks for sitting down and talking with us today. Of course, we'll continue to post more content and schedule more webinars. So keep an eye on the training calendar in our knowledge base for more sessions like this. Of course, if there's anything we didn't get to or any questions that came in at the end of the session, we'll try to get to that by following up with you offline. Before we end, though, let's try something new. Using the chat, the chat widget that you guys have been using this whole time. Go ahead and enter a rating, a 1 to 5 or something like that, of what you felt, how helpful you found this session. I think that'll be kind of interesting to end it off here today. And of course, the recordings of this as well will be on the knowledge base. Hey, we'll take the 3, Barb. Thank you. 4.5. I'll take the 4.5 if we're going out of 5. That's awesome. We all enjoyed your voice, Chris.
is. That's a good suggestion.
That's a great. So Barb mentioned it would be helpful to see the screens as the questions are being answered, and that is a great suggestion, especially if you're kind of used to the webinars that we normally put and you're seeing the demos being run. So that's a great suggestion. 4 from Shannon, and again, she's echoing the sentiment. Would be helpful for the visuals. So I think that's something that's extremely doable. I think that would be pretty contingent upon getting a lot of the questions sent beforehand, and we do have a number of questions that get sent beforehand. So what we could do to kind of, as a compromise, all the questions we get beforehand, we're going to try to make sure that we have visuals for that. And then all the questions that come in the Q&A, we'll see if we're comfortable enough to like kind of demo it live.
Yes, but going to the admin panel or whatnot,
right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of moving pieces on that, so we'll try to do a compromise that view. As soon as you see it go up, register, send us your questions early, and we'll make visuals for you guys. But again, Barb, Jasmine, Shannon, thanks for your feedback. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to Chris, Anna, Monica for taking the time to do this for us today. Hope to see you guys at the future ones. We're going to get them all scheduled, and it's going to be on the training calendar for you guys. So again, thanks everyone, and we'll catch you on the next session.